Hello everyone, wishing you all a wonderful day. Today, we're diving into the incredible journey of Diep, a girl who rose from betrayal and poverty to rebuild her entire life with her own hands. If this story inspires you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss the next videos. From the very beginning, Diep was never the kind of girl people believed would one day run a business, much less lead an entire company. She grew up in a tiny, poor village where opportunities were rare and dreams felt like distant stars. Beautiful, but too far to touch. Yet even then, there was something stubborn in her eyes. A kind of quiet fire that refused to go out, no matter how hard life tried to smother it. Diep didn't have money, education, or a family name to lean on. All she had was hope. Thin, fragile, but persistent. What she never expected was that the hardest part of her journey wouldn't come from poverty, but from betrayal. Years ago, long before she ever knew what terms like niche, market, or business model even meant, Diep trusted one person more than anyone else on this earth. That person wasn't a sister by blood, but by bond. Her closest friend, the girl she grew up with, someone she believed would walk through fire for her. One night, that friend sat across from her, holding her hand so tightly it felt like a promise. "Diep, believe me," she whispered, eyes shining with excitement. "This business plan will change everything. If we invest now, we can finally get out of this village. We'll build a future together." Diep, with all the innocence of someone who had never seen deception up close, smiled. "If we succeed, that means we can finally escape poverty, right?" "Of course," the friend said immediately. Not a single flinch. Not a single hesitation. "We'll rise together, just you and me." And just like that, Diep believed her. She didn't just invest money. She invested trust, time, and every piece of herself she could spare. Diep scraped together every jong she had ever saved from working long days in the fields. She borrowed from neighbors. She sold her old motorbike, her jewelry, even her mother's last keepsake, all because she trusted the one person she thought would never betray her. She worked harder than she ever had in her life. Days blurred into nights as she prepared documents, contacted people she didn't even know, and handled everything her friend insisted was necessary. She dreamed of the day the project would finally lift them out of the life they had always struggled through. Then one morning, her entire world unraveled. The project? Fake. The documents she spent months preparing? Useless. The money she borrowed? Gone. And the friend she loved like a sister? Disappeared. No calls, no messages, no goodbye. Diep collapsed onto the wooden floor of her tiny room. The air felt cold. Her hands shook as if they no longer belonged to her. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do this to me?" There was no answer. Only the emptiness of a friendship that never existed the way she thought it did. For days, Diep felt like she was living inside a dark tunnel with no exit. She didn't want to eat, didn't want to speak. She barely slept. Everything she owned was gone, and the shame of being fooled so easily crushed her more than the debt itself. But even in that darkness, something small kept pulling her back up. A tiny hand tugging her sleeve, a little voice trying to reach her through the silence. Me. The small girl she cared for. The child who had no one else in the world. One afternoon, as Diep sat alone, staring blankly at the wall, Nye approached her carefully. "Auntie Diep," she said softly, "why are you crying?" Diep quickly wiped her face with the back of her hand. "I'm not crying, sweet girl. I'm just tired. Nye climbed into her lap, resting her little head on Diep's chest. "It's okay. I'll be good. Don't be sad." Those 4 words struck something deep inside Diep. Right then, she realized she didn't have the luxury of falling apart. Someone needed her. Someone believed in her, even when she couldn't believe in herself. So she stood back up, shaky, exhausted, but determined. And that was the real beginning. Diep took every job she could find. It didn't matter if the sun burned her skin or her hands bled. She worked in orchards, picking mangoes until her back ached. She carried heavy sacks at the warehouse, loading truck after truck until her arms felt like they would fall off. "Boss Diep, Huang Nuok Ji," one worker offered. Diep shook her head, pushing her sweaty hair back. "I'm okay. We need to finish these 30 bags today." Her voice wasn't harsh, just focused. Even exhausted, she kept her energy steady because everyone depended on her to set the pace. She checked shipments, counted inventory, ran documents. "How many bags so far?" she asked one afternoon. "8 already," an older worker replied. "We'll reach 30, don't worry." "Good. Keep going," she said, even though her own hands were trembling. At night, when most people were resting, Diep was still on the phone handling business. "Van," she said over Zalo, "I've sent all the documents. I can't come to the company today. Too many shipments here. Please handle things for me." "Got it," Van responded. "But Diep, you're doing everything alone. You need to take care of yourself too." Diep let out a tired little laugh. "I'll rest when life allows it." But the one thing that always softened her heart was picking up Nye from school. "Auntie Diep," Nye shouted, running into her arms. "Can I skip school today?" Diep chuckled, brushing the girl's hair. "No skipping. If you study well now, you'll have a better life later. Don't end up like me." Nye pouted. "I want Uncle James to take me to school." "Uncle James is busy," Diep said gently. "We have to be patient." James, however, wasn't blind to how drained Diep was. "Let me pick up Nye today," he said one afternoon. "You're taking on too much. You need a break." Diep hesitated. "I don't want to bother you." "You're not bothering me," he said firmly. "You've been handling everything alone for too long." Slowly, piece by piece, Diep rebuilt her life. She rebuilt the business from nothing. The workers began to respect her, not out of fear, but admiration. "Boss Diep, shipment incoming." "Bring it in," she replied, calm and steady. "We've got deadlines." No one truly saw what she went through behind the scenes. The nights she cried quietly, while boiling water for Nye to wash her face. The mornings she forced herself to smile so the little girl wouldn't worry. The heavy weight of betrayal that never fully left her chest. But that pain didn't break her. It shaped her. It sharpened her. Pain has a strange way of transforming people. For some, it crushes them completely. But for others, people like Diep, it forces them to become something stronger than they ever imagined. The betrayal that once shattered her heart slowly became the fire that pushed her forward, teaching her lessons no school could ever offer. She learned how to talk to suppliers who didn't take her seriously at first. She learned how to negotiate deals, how to speak with confidence, and how to push back when someone tried to take advantage of her kindness. She learned how to manage employees, schedule shipments, handle paperwork, and solve problems faster than they could appear. And she learned all of this while still caring for Nye, who was not her child, not her sibling, not her responsibility by blood, but her responsibility by love. Those early days were the hardest. Diep had no mentor, no guidance, no one to show her the ropes. Every mistake cost her time, money, or sleep. But she kept going anyway. She refused to let the world see her break, even on days when her legs felt like they couldn't carry her anymore. Her mornings often began before sunrise. By the time other workers arrived, she had already checked inventory, replied to messages, and prepared the day's tasks. "Boss Diep, we're running low on packaging," someone would say. "I know," she answered calmly. "The new shipment arrives this afternoon. Make sure the warehouse is ready." Her voice carried a quiet authority. It wasn't loud, it wasn't harsh, but it was firm, earned through sweat and sleepless nights. People started noticing. "Diep works harder than any of us," one uncle said to another. "She rebuilt everything from nothing," the other replied. "Not many people can do that." But no one saw the moments she broke down in private. The times she locked herself in the bathroom at work, pressing a hand to her chest as tears threatened to fall. The moments she stared at herself in the mirror and whispered, "Just one more day. You can do one more day." Still, she always stepped out with her chin up. At home, knee was her strength. Every time Diep returned after a long day, the little girl ran to the door. "Auntie Diep, you're home." Diep would smile, sometimes tired, sometimes genuine, and lift her up. "I'm back. Did you eat already?" "I waited for you," Nai said proudly. It was in these tiny moments that Diep found her purpose. One evening, after dinner, Diep sat alone on the floor, reviewing invoices. Her head throbbed from hours of work. That was when James appeared at her door, holding a bag of groceries. "You're still working?" he asked gently. Diep didn't even look up. "There's too much to finish. If I stop, everything will fall behind." James walked closer. "You can't take care of Nai or the business if you collapse first." Diep finally looked at him. "I don't have a choice." "Yes, you do," he said softly. "You can ask for help." But asking for help was something Diep had forgotten how to do. After being betrayed by the person she trusted most, relying on others felt dangerous. Still, little by little, she allowed people into her world again, carefully, cautiously. James helped drive Nai to school when Diep couldn't. Van handled office tasks on days when the warehouse demanded too much attention. Workers began helping her with heavy loads without being asked. Slowly, her burden became lighter. And as her responsibilities grew, so did the company. It didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen easily. But every order she fulfilled, every customer she satisfied, every deadline she met, pushed her one step closer to stability. One morning, as the warehouse buzzed with activity, a new supplier arrived. "Who's in charge here?" he asked loudly. A worker pointed. "Boss Diep." The man blinked, surprised, watching as Diep carried a clipboard and walked between pallets with practiced focus. "You're the boss?" he asked when she approached. Diep didn't flinch. "Yes. How can I help you?" He handed her the contract. "I expected someone older." Diep smiled politely. "Then today is your lucky day. Let's talk business." They negotiated right there in the warehouse, and by the end of the conversation, the supplier looked at her with newfound respect. "You're tougher than you look," he admitted. "I've had a tough life," Diep replied. "It trains you well." Years passed, and the girl who once cried on the floor of her tiny wooden room became a woman people admired, someone steady, dependable, almost unshakable. But the wound from her past never fully disappeared. There were nights when she sat alone after Nye fell asleep, staring out the window, wondering where her old friend was now, wondering why she had been betrayed so easily, wondering if she was foolish or simply too trusting. Sometimes pain felt like a shadow following her everywhere, but she didn't run from it anymore. She carried it, learned from it, and used it to fuel her resolve. One evening, Nye came home from school holding a drawing. "Look, Auntie Diep, it's us. You're working at your desk, and I'm helping you with homework." Diep smiled, her heart softening instantly. "That's beautiful." "I wrote something," Nye said proudly, pointing to the corner of the paper. In childish handwriting were the words, "Auntie Diep is my hero." Diep froze. She didn't cry, but her eyes glistened. In that moment, she realized that everything she had endured, every tear she had swallowed, every bruise life had given her, it all led her here, to this small living room, to this child who saw strength in her, even when she failed to see it in herself. Her past no longer controlled her. It shaped her, but it didn't define her. Business grew steadily. Workers respected her leadership. Customers trusted her reliability. Suppliers valued her honesty. And slowly, word spread that Diep's company, run by a woman who once had nothing, was one of the most dependable in the region. People often asked her, "How did you do it? How did you survive betrayal like that?" Diep always gave the same answer: "Because I had to. Because someone depended on me." She never mentioned the sleepless nights, the fear of failing again, the days she felt like collapsing, the memories that haunted her. She simply kept moving, and eventually, she became the kind of woman storms couldn't touch. From the girl who was betrayed, to the woman who rebuilt everything with her bare hands, to the guardian who protected a child with fierce love, to the entrepreneur who rose from the ashes of her past. Diep became unstoppable. The world that once tried to break her now had to watch her rise. And this time, no storm, no challenge, and no betrayal would ever bring her down again. Diep grew up in a poor village with nothing but determination in her heart. Trusting her closest friend, she invested everything she had into a project that later turned out to be a cruel scam. Losing all her savings and falling into debt, Diep was left devastated and betrayed, but she couldn't give up, not when little Nye, the child she cared for, depended on her. Diep took on every job she could find, working tirelessly under the sun and late into the night. With grit and unwavering perseverance, she slowly rebuilt her life from zero. She learned to negotiate, manage workers, and run a business on her own. Through heartbreak, exhaustion, and countless obstacles, Diep transformed from a deceived village girl into a strong, respected entrepreneur. Her journey proves that no storm can break a determined heart.